Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 293. Today we're going to talk about the Spoils. Now this is a new game but also a really old game. It's a trading card game, and what you look at here is sort of the starter player deck. This is to get you into the game. This comes with 5 decks from 5 different factions, but you can also get your custom pre-constructed decks. You can get boosters and stuff like that. This game actually came out I think in 2005 or 6. And I remember hearing quite a lot about this game when it came out. I was really heavy into Versus system, also playing Magic. And a lot of guys that I played Versus with said, oh, you got to check out Spoils, check it out. It's better than Magic, it's better than Versus, all this stuff. And I just never got around to checking it out. I was kind of getting out of Versus and stuff like that, so I wasn't really interested in picking up a new trading card game. But it had a good amount of hype. I remember that year that it came out. So now they're re-releasing it, kind of rebooting it. From what I can see, they haven't changed, I don't think, anything about the gameplay. I could be wrong about that. But let's go ahead and look at how it works, and then I'll tell you what I think of it. Okay, first let's do kind of like a 30-second unboxing here. And one thing that's really cool is that this actually comes with a deck box. So you buy the thing, you've got a deck box, it's travel size, and you have here your 5 boxes there, and then you've got a little one of these styrofoam thingies, so you can take that out and as you add more cards. It does come with a stack of these foil cards, so these are somewhat randomized. Everything else in here is the same. And then the game comes with here 1 page of rules, and the other side is a glossary of terms. And I will say I was totally able to play the game from that 1 page of rules. I did have to reference a couple of the keywords on the other side. I went online to their website to kind of double check that I felt like I was playing everything okay, and I was. So it's typical of a TCG to be able to do that, but pretty commendable that they were able to squeeze all of this into 1 page of rules. So let's take a look at these decks here, and then I'll tell you how the game works. So here we can see the 5 faction decks, the starter decks that come with the box. Now each of these is made up of 39 cards, plus here we have the faction card. Now these are the same for all of these particular factions. I assume you can get others in booster packs and things. So this is the tournament faction. This is the influence here. That's kind of the starting life you have. The object of the game is to reduce your opponent's life to 0, or your opponent's influence to 0. And it gives you a little bit of information here. Starting resources, any 2 staple resources. Starting draw, if you're going first you draw 8, if you're going second you draw 9. And then there's a restore rule and a develop rule, and basically you get to do these at the start of your turn. So at the start of your turn, restore all your depleted cards and detach all resources from your faction. Well, depleted cards are basically tapped cards. So if you had a character here and you used it, and you would deplete it and tap it, and then at the start of your turn you restore it. If you have a a resource, here is the deception resource, which is the good for the rogues. And all the resources are basically these scantily clad women. Doesn't really bother me, but they do mention this is kind of an adult TCG, so there you go. Take that for what you will. Every resource is a scantily clad women, which is kind of oddball, but so as you spend resources, what you do is actually attach these to the faction. I actually don't do that, I just tap them, just because that's what I'm used to doing. So that's how that works. So at the start of your turn, you're going to basically untap everybody and then undeplete your resources. And then this is the interesting part. At the start of your turn, draw a card or play a resource. And then during your turn, you can later on pay 3 to draw a card or pay 4 to play another resource. So that's pretty cool, because there's a couple of ways you can play resources. You can obviously play one of these staple resources here. So you have another example in here. Here we have the Warlord staple resource. So I can just play a resource, or I can draw a card. So there is built-in hand management within this trading card framework, which is interesting. And now the other thing you can do, you could always, if you want, play a card face down, and that will count as a resource, just not of a particular type. So if you look at the bottom of the resource cards here, you can see that is the actual type of the resource itself. Now if you look here at this card here, this is a tactic card. You can see there's the cost to play it, but you have a threshold of this here. So you need at least 2 of these types of resources out on the board to be able to play it. So for example, here is a character. He costs 3. You're going to have to pay 3. Attach 3 to your faction card, or tap them like I do. And then you need at least 1, if that's going to focus, of these Warlord resources here, these rage. So that's how the resources work that way. After you start your turn, you've untapped everything, you've unattached all your resources, you've drawn a card or played a resource, and then you have basically kind of a free-form turn. You can play some cards, play some effects, attack once, do something else, then attack again. There's no real strict phases in the game, which is kind of refreshing, and it actually works really well. So the first thing you might do would be to deploy a card, and that we've already kind of talked about here. You pay that, you need the threshold of that particular resource, and you put that character out. So you got a warlord character here. When you look at the characters, you got a couple of things to look at. You have speed, strength, and life. Speed is the order in which they will attack, which I'll explain. Strength is how much they attack with, and life obviously is how much damage they can take before they are destroyed and discarded. Now here we have an item, and there are different kinds of items. Sometimes items you will attach to a character, and other times they'll just be out in play. You can see it costs 2, you need a threshold of that. And then you have here pay 3, and you put a token on this card. And then the cost, deplete this card, pick a character, inflict X damage to the character where X is the number of tokens. So you kind of charge up this item over time, and then you get the blast. Now you can see, you can get a sense of the theme here as a kind of strange sort of conglomeration of science fiction, steampunk, fantasy, all kinds of crazy stuff. So it is a very, very fun theme. You can even see here you have some different sort of animal type of creatures, some anthropic, cats and dogs and things. And I should show here, I was going to show you, this is the location here. So this is the amount of damage that location can take, and then this is going to sit out there and do stuff. Now when a character takes damage, they have a threshold damage. So if you hit their threshold, they're out of the game. They're going to heal their damage at the end of the turn, but a location is not. You're going to have to mark that, with some kind of cube or token or something like that. And there is a lot of stuff in here that I should say that uses tokens. So you want a bag of cubes or dice or piece of paper or something to track all of this stuff. I wouldn't say it's fiddly, but if you don't have any tokens, there's no way you're going to memorize it. So you do need something to track all the stuff. Now there's another type of card. Before we talk about combat, which is really the heart of the game, let's talk about these tactics. And these are kind of like your instants in Magic or your spells. Now these are the only cards that can be played when it's your opponent's turn. You do have other abilities and things that will be existing on characters and items. Those can also be played, on your opponent's turn. But in terms of like card play, the tactics are the only thing that you can play on your opponent's turn. And they're going to have this here, cost, pick a character, X is its strength. If that character controls at least X face down resources, destroy the character. So as the game goes along, you're going to kind of possibly run out of these staple resources, so you may start playing face down resources. So this can be used against that as a surprise attack. So those are all the general card types. And what you're really trying to do is attack players. And what you're going to do is you're either going to attack directly their faction card, or possibly a location. If you want to get that out of play, you want to do some damage to it to destroy it. There we've got kind of a setup for combat. Now I will say there is a keyword that it comes into play in a couple of the decks, is covert. Now covert can only be blocked by other covert players. It's kind of like flying or something like that in Magic. Now we've got a situation here where possibly the warlord character or player is trying to attack the rogue's tournament faction card directly. They've got 2 characters in play here, and now we've got 3 on this side. Now what you're going to look at here is the speed of the different characters. So I may declare my attacking group there, and then my opponent maybe will choose to block with 1 guy or 2 guys or all 3 at once. And just for argument's sake, let's just say everybody's going to attack everybody. These guys are going to attack, and these guys are going to block. And the first thing we're going to look at is the speed. And this guy, Opportunistic Pirate, has 5 speed. So within the attacking and blocking group, we're going to deal damage based on speed. So he's actually going to apply his 4 strength of damage first. So if you had 2 guys that were equal speed, they would kind of apply it simultaneously, and the player who controls the character has to divvy up that amount of damage, in this case 4, among the different guys there. So this guy, he's got a life 5 and a life 1. So he's going to take, and he's going to say, okay, this guy takes 4 damage. So they're both still in play. Then we're going to go next to the 4 speed and the 3 speed and so on. A couple other keywords here, like this one is tactical. So this is pretty cool. So that means you can actually play this as if it was a tactic. So you could play that on your opponent's turn as an opportunistic pirate. So play her, get her out, and then he thinks, I'm going to attack, and like, haha, surprise. I've had a bunch of resources saved. Now I'm going to throw her down, and now we're going to be having a little bit of a blocking action, and I've got my really good character involved. Now anything left over after combat is going to apply to directly to the location, or in this case the faction location, to take damage and reduce the influence directly. So what this has in common with Magic is that whole kind of timing with combat. Okay, I send some guys in to sacrifice and take some of your guys out to come in, play my covert guy later, maybe have some abilities to turn it into covert, or there's some different little cool combos I can do with the variety of different characters that are out. And the factions do play quite a bit differently. Your warlords are sort of your direct damage. Your gearsmiths, they're going to have a lot of different items and things. The rogues is a real kind of funky, tricky deck. The arcanists have a lot of covert, it seems like, and so do the bankers actually. And the bankers, they have a lot of locations and things, and then, some decks should be trying to go out and kind of rush, and other ones you want trying to tech up and build up for the big surprise and the big hitter. And then I should say, once all the damage is done and everything's been applied, then you're going to deplete everything. So you can't just block with whoever. Sorry, I'm kind of in assumption mode with my Magic brain, but you're also going to deplete your defenders, and you can't defend with a depleted character as well. But as I said, the rules are very straightforward. It's one page of rules, and a lot of the dynamics are really going to come out with the different decks. But let me just go into my review mode before I start reviewing too much here. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. I really like this game, and TCG is not usually my kind of thing. I'm just not in that place in my life, but what comes with the box is pretty cool. Each of the factions plays differently, and I really enjoy the free formness of it. I like that you can attack and then do something else and then attack again. That's really cool. So the way that the game plays is definitely not on rails. Even that whole thing of like, do I draw or do I play a resource? Sometimes you want to get a bigger hand size so you get more options, but if you've got a lot of cards that cost a lot, you want to get more resources down in. So maybe you will wait out some of the early turns to forgo putting up a couple of peon blockers because they got a little 1/1 guy right down there. You're like, okay, you can hit me for 1, but I'm going to pay that 3 resources to get out an extra resource, and now I'm ahead of you on that mana curve, so to speak. So I'm trying to stipulate this a little bit, but more than any TCG, I think there really is a nice hand management aspect to this that you don't usually see. You normally see that in a game like Race for the Galaxy or San Juan or something like that, but you don't usually see that. You do kind of in Netrunner, to be honest, but a lot of these sort of top decking games, it's kind of different, but this one definitely has hand management built in, and so it's a very fresh way to do it. And I also like that you can play a resource face down. It's not the one of your particular type, but you can do it. I will say though, after playing with each of the different factions, I'm kind of bored of those already because they're kind of straightforward. Now, I could get some more plays out of them, but what you really want to do is mix them. And the deck count and the number of cards that are supposed to be in the deck, it's really designed, I think, for basically a 2-color system. You could go a monocolor, if you could buy like 2 of these boxes or got this and then like the companion pre-constructed deck. You could do that, but I think they're really meant to be mixed, and I think that's where the fun is going to be. And you could do like a 3-color deck. I'm sure there's combos and stuff that folks will figure out. But yeah, so because you have the different types of resources that each faction really desires in terms of the threshold, and some factions will be a little bit better about doing the damage, but they're not as good as defense, or they don't have as many tricks up their sleeves, and some of the tricks are really nasty. It's like, okay, pick a character and destroy it. And it's like, what? Like, wait, that was my awesome guy. Wait a minute. But once you learn that stuff, and it's kind of like Magic in that way, where you're like, okay, I know that's in that deck now, so I got to be careful. And there's that fating and bluffing thing that, if you play Magic a lot, you get into, and you get kind of reading the meta and all that stuff. So it's interesting. I like the artwork. They do say it is an adult theme. I don't really have any problem with it. Nobody's naked, really. One person kind of looks naked. Yeah, and that's going to vary from family to family and person to person in terms of what their threshold is. But there's just there's that. But I do like the world. It's very funky, very kind of silly, thematic, cluster of different themes and all that stuff. So anyway, definitely take a look at it. And it's not one. I know TCG is like kind of a collectible, random booster thing. That doesn't mean you can't play the game without getting, sucked into all of that. You could get this and then a couple of the other pre-constructed decks and, a handful of boosters, and you'd have a bunch of stuff to play, and it would be fun because there is a lot of factions and a lot of different colors and things that you can mix and match and play with. So anyway, take a look. Spoils.